Thank you so much for joining us today on Outcry Witness Unspoken. Today, I have the honor of bringing a true public servant to you to talk about a subject that we all want to know more about, and that is human trafficking. I bring you here today Ms. Amy Derrick, who has been an assistant district attorney in the Dallas County District Attorney's Office for many, many, many years, and you will hear all about it as I introduce her to you. You will be so impressed by her career of service and the acute nature of the work that she does with courage and honor every single day. Thank you again for joining us today, and I'm so happy to introduce you to Amy Derrick. I am JoDee Neil, a former prosecutor, a survivor, and the author of Outcry Witness. This is Outcry Witness Unspoken, where we say what the system won't. Thank you so much for being here today, Ms. Amy Derrick of the Dallas County District Attorney's Office. Welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Amy, you and I went to law school together.
We did.
We also did prosecution clinic together.
We did.
Have I ever told you of how much you inspired me?
No, but that's embarrassing.
No. So I want to get started and share a story about what I remember as I sit here today of you. You're a little thing. How tall are you?
Like 5'3".
5'3".
Yeah.
And I remember, I'm sure now you see in the context of my life, like I wasn't doing so great back then in those days. And I remember sitting there watching, because we had to give our closing arguments in front of everybody, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I sat there and I watched you give your closing argument. And I was so inspired because you are a fighter.
Oh, well, thank you. I try.
Yeah. How many cases do you think you tried in your career?
I don't know. I mean, it's over. I don't know. I'd have to go look. It's over 100. I haven't always been the best at like keeping track the way you're supposed to for resumes and stuff. But it's well over 100.
I mean, you could try a case before we even had bar cards.
That is true. Yes. So I actually had a 3L bar card. So I had a bar card where I was allowed to try cases, in my third year of law school, and I was working down in the family violence courts then.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was a family violence closing argument that I remember you giving.
It was.
And as I was in my prosecutor career, I would think back to you arguing when we were basically baby lawyers that day. So I just wanted you to know that you had a big impact on my career.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
I took that fire with me. Because, as a woman, you need to see that it's okay to fight.
Yes, absolutely. And that's been hard. We do a lot of mentoring within the office with our young attorneys, but particularly the female attorneys and that kind of a thing. And, when I can think back, I mean, we're coming up on 22 years now, just all the different ways that you've been treated or dismissed, by different people within the courthouse and that kind of a thing. I mean, I've actually been patted on the head before.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Patted on the head. So let's talk about the environment where you work.
Yeah.
You work in a big old downtown courthouse called Frank Crowley.
I do. It is big. We're the second largest DA's office in the state. It's very high paced, lots and lots of cases a year get filed in misdemeanor all the way up to felony. We have a lot of prosecutors who say we're the largest law firm in town, because we are actually. We have over 250 attorneys there. So yeah.
What is your ranking among all the prosecutors in the Dallas DA's office?
So I'm on Judge Cruzo. He's the elected district attorney, administration team. And so I supervise crimes against children, sexual assault, human trafficking, and then our cold case division, which includes homicide cases and also the untested rape kit project.
Wow. So you oversee 4 full divisions.
Yes, and I have since 2019.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Which division is the largest?
Crimes against children by far. It's always had the most funding. It also receives the most case filings every year. The cold case homicide unit is fairly new. It's completely funded by grants, and it just started a couple of years ago. What we call our SACI project, the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative, that's the Untested Sex Assault Kit project. That's been happening for a decade. It is also fully funded by grants. And then the sex assault unit itself, which I say they try the hot cases, so the ones that have been solved recently versus cold cases that have been existing for a long time unsolved. That unit is small and it is partially funded by grants.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And how often are you in trial? Or are you overseeing all the trials?
I'm overseeing them. Yeah. I try to get into trial second chair with prosecutors at least once a year. It doesn't always work out. I had my own capital murder case that I was handling last year. He took a life sentence on the day of jury selection. So a lot less than it used to be. It just sort of varies.
Yeah.
But I am involved in the day-to-day operations of all of my team.
Yeah. So, crimes against children, we tend to think it's all sexual violence, but you just mentioned you had a capital murder case. Do you deal with the physical violence and murder cases of children as well?
We do. So the Crimes Against Children unit, it handles all physical abuse of children, and that includes child homicide.
Oh, how have you done this work for so long?
I mean, when I graduated law school and started at the DA's office, it wasn't the path that I saw myself on. I had a lot of pivotal people come into my life who sort of placed me and encouraged me along the path. If you ask my mom, she says it's a calling. But there is something to that. I think you have to, in order to stay in it for a long time. And I've seen prosecutors and investigators, support staff who've rotated in and out, and they've come and go. They've done short stints, long stints, however you define long. But you really do have to have a passion for it. And you have to see it as just your reason,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not to say that I haven't had periods of time in my life when I've been very burned out. It's hard. I mean, the work is hard, and it does affect every aspect of your life, including your relationships at home and with your friends and family and that kind of a thing. I do have a really good therapist,
Yeah.
And have for years to just help me sort of work my way through, what I see on the day to day.
And what you see on the day to day, do you ever feel just this rage at the way society is treating our most precious and vulnerable members?
I don't know if it's rage so much as disappointment. There's a lot in the media. We're here to talk about human trafficking, especially. You hear a lot about human trafficking just in society in general. I mean, we have billboards up on the side of 35 about it, especially now that FIFA's here. Everybody's talking about it. It's been the topic of conversation statewide. But then it does feel like we're still fighting the same old stereotypes and ideas culturally that have existed for decades. And it's sad that we haven't evolved when we know so much now.
So tell me one area where you think that we should evolve to, that we're not there yet.
We're so bad at blaming the victim across the board.
Yeah.
I mean, in the sexual assault, human trafficking, we are so bad at blaming the victim. There was a period of time where I used to keep a running list of things that jurors would say to me during jury selection because I wanted to remember how people were answering questions. And then I stopped after a while, but it got depressing. But I mean, it's just, this idea that people are really choosing things that they're not, that it's their fault because they happen to be in a certain place at a certain time or wearing a certain thing or just living their life in a certain way that maybe you disagree with, but somehow that makes them like their victimization was somehow their own fault,
Right.
that they brought it upon themselves. It's
Right.
just absurd to me.
Well, and what a great segue to our primary topic today, which is human trafficking. And we are hosting the World Cup here in Dallas. So it's a perfect time for us to talk about, like you said, FIFA is here. And I'm asked so often, what is human trafficking? And I see that people really care, but no one knows what it is. What is human trafficking, Amy?
Well, it's not the Liam Neeson movie. I mean,
Taken?
yes,
Yeah.
that was a great movie, but that's what people think it is, that someone's out somewhere living life and they get kidnapped and held for ransom. And then in the meantime, they're being sold over and over and over again. People are being sold as product. That is trafficking. When someone else is, however they're doing it, selling another human for their own benefit or gain. That is human trafficking. But it's often not ever what we saw on that movie.
And so
you know.
the selling transaction is from the seller to the buyer.
Correct.
But there's somebody in the middle, and who's that?
Yes. And it's more profitable than selling drugs or something like that
Yeah.
because drugs is a one-time use. You sell the drug, they consume the drug, and the product is gone. With people, you can sell the same product, if that's what you want to call it, over and over and over again. So your supply, if that's how you want to look at it, never ends. You know.
Wow. And to just appreciate that there are people who walk among us that look at human beings in this commodity type manner that's a tough pill to swallow.
It's disgusting.
You must deal with jurors who simply can't accept that this is happening in our world.
Well, we do. You know, people like to live in bubbles of safety. So, you know, I mean, let's be real. We all do it. We don't like to believe that something that gross could be happening next to us or in our own communities. On the flip side of that, when you don't want to believe that something like that's happening and you're being faced with it, you then have to find reasons to justify how it could have happened.
Yeah.
You know, people don't want to believe that there just are evil people in the world. There are. And they're doing horrible things to other humans all over the world all the time, you know.
I was talking with a human trafficking survivor. I know her on TikTok, and she told me that her trafficker made $320,000 off her body one Super Bowl weekend in New York.
Yeah.
So when you say this is far more profitable than a drug transaction, you're not joking.
No.
So as far as the person in the middle is concerned, why would a potential juror blame that human trafficking victim for being a part of an operation like this?
Well, if you're talking about adults, you know, they think that there's an element of choice there. So
You mean adults, like
grown people, you know, they're legally
Yeah.
adults, right? They can vote, you know, consume alcohol, drive, you know, however you want to define that. And so they want to believe that they're there by choice. I mean, it's the question that you see in domestic violence cases all the time. Why doesn't she, and I'm going to use she because it's primarily the population we're talking about. Why doesn't she just leave? Why would you let someone do that to you? You know, why don't you just say no? You know, and they're not appreciating the context that goes into the fact that it is not a choice. No one grows up in life saying, you know, my lifelong goal is to be sold as a sex worker.
Right.
You know.
Right. In fact, you showed up today with your big old copy of the penal code, and human trafficking actually permits, a conviction through the coercion of the victim. Tell me about that.
Right. So, you know, unlike Taken, where you're being forced, right? Like your life is held in someone else's hands. If you don't do what they say, you're going to die. It's actually more subtle than that in most cases. So you do see a lot of addiction that gets taken advantage of. You know, and we often say that the most coercive ways, you know, people who traffic other humans, other people, they're really, really good at the way that they manipulate and groom people into the process alongside them. There are times when we have victims of human trafficking who do not even see themselves as being a victim of human trafficking. They still believe that they're there by choice. And so it's hard explaining to outside parties that even they're wrong about where they sit in their own life space. You know, a really good example is we had a trial last summer where our victim, she was a young lady, had a long history of just neglect. She'd been in and out of foster care. CPS had been in her life. She had been abused, had been trafficked before, got away from her first trafficker, and ended up with a second trafficker that she believed was her boyfriend, had a baby with him, and we're now asking her to come in and testify against him. Well, she did testify because she was under subpoena and had to, and told the jury she was not a victim of trafficking, that they were in a relationship, that was who she loved, that was the father of her child, and she did not want to see convicted. Now, the text messages and the cell phone evidence showed a completely different story. You know, he was trafficking her. He was selling her body to others for sex. But that was what we experienced in the trial in and of itself. So there's just a lot of challenges that you have to overcome.
Wow. Now you said that she had been abused as a child. How common is it that your trafficking victims had survived not only or possibly child sexual abuse, but other types of adverse childhood experiences? ACEs, they're called.
It's super common. And our victim advocates actually, when they meet with our victims, do the ACEs screen alongside them. Well, yeah. I mean, because we want to see if there's anything that's been missed before they've gotten to us. You know, and oftentimes disclosure is a process, as you know. And so, you know, it takes time for them to really explain the breadth of what they've gone through. And we want to know so that we can offer services, but also tell the jury the whole story, you know, how they got here.
That is so smart. And so you have incorporated a lot of trauma study research into your model at the Dallas County DA's office.
We have. And we've been really blessed that our advocates that we've had working, particularly in our trafficking section, have been very knowledgeable and educated on all of the complex issues that are involved with it.
Have you found in your work in 22 years working with child abuse survivors and advocates and everyone in the system that so many of us who are drawn to this work have survived adverse childhood experiences?
Yes. I would say, you know, I try not to I'm trying to figure out how to say it. I try not to have staff who come from a place like that, because you are seeing so much on the day-to-day. And we've had experiences before where we've had employees who thought that they could handle it and they were there a couple of years, and then suddenly the one case comes along and hits the wrong way, and it, you know, it's so difficult.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to be the person who's place someone back in some sort of like traumatic experience because of what they've experienced before.
Wow.
You know,
that is so really forward thinking of you to understand that people, myself included, are drawn to this work, trying to heal what happened to us a long time ago. So you screen for this.
We do.
Wow.
Yeah, we do.
That's so smart. Sorry, you just blew my mind.
Yeah.
All right. Well, back to human trafficking. What is, like, is it right to call the perpetrators pimps or madams, or are they something else?
No, I mean, that's a common term. You can call them that. That is what they are doing. I think it's the term that most people associate with it. And just for ease of technology or, you know, terminology, everybody knows what that is. Or at least they have an idea of what they think that is.
What are the biggest challenges to prosecuting these cases?
Participation.
Yes.
And I use that term because prosecutors like to say cooperation all the time. My victim is uncooperative. Oh. She is not uncooperative. She is unable to participate at this moment.
I see.
And I did not come up with that. So we do a lot of work with Equitas, which is a nonprofit out of DC that offers prosecutorial support, mostly in crimes against women and children, but mostly crimes against women. And they have really been digging into the human trafficking thing for the last few years. We did a pilot project with them a few years ago on the heels of COVID to have them come in and help us audit our processes, not only in our prosecution of human trafficking, but also in our off-ramps for victims of trafficking, like our services that we were being offered and that kind of a thing. And we used to have these regular meetings with them where they would have what we call survivor leader experts. So they're women who have gotten out of the life and they're now experts on human trafficking. They're survivors and they're out there using their voice to really bring attention to the realities of it. And listening to those women is the most valuable thing that anyone in this space can do, because you can cerebrally know something. I can read all the books and the papers and think I have a handle on it. But until you actually talk to people who've lived it, it's totally different. And one of them said that to me, and it changed everything about the way that I use language when I talk about it now.
Yeah, yeah. So is Equitas also offering the prosecutors support?
They do. If we have a hard case and we need research done or just ideas on how to do better or strategy for trial, you can call them. They jump right in. They offer lots of training all around the country. They're at conferences everywhere. I mean, you just call, email, and they're there.
I've found that the prosecutors are almost the most invisible layer of law enforcement.
Yeah.
There's a lot of back the blue, blue stripe, but no one really thinks about what the prosecutors go through, and it's substantial.
I think that's true. I mean, we don't have like a day or.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I love that you say participation. When I think of victims of human trafficking, I think of hostages in plain sight. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you may see them on a street corner somewhere or at a gas station. You have an idea of what's going on, And again, this is where we're dealing with jurors all the time. Why doesn't she just walk away? Because she can't. Well, what are the reasons why she can't walk away? Well, if she's got any sort of criminal history, is she able to find a job? Does she have any education? Is she dealing with addiction issues? And so the number one thing on her mind is not walking away, but where is she going to get her next, whatever it is. Is she in a relationship with her trafficker? Do they have children together? Some of the things that we've heard is a lot of these traffickers who are trafficking lots of women at a time, they form sort of this family. They don't want to leave their sisters behind.
Yeah.
But they're also afraid because, like we see in domestic violence cases too, they've been so, brainwashed into believing, and a lot of times it is true. He will find them. He will find them and he will hurt them. They've been hurt. It's survival. It is survival is what it is.
And, the jurors who are asking those questions, I feel like it's taken us a long time to understand, well, about 40 years, that there's been trauma research that an act of abuse, especially when it first occurs on a child, creates a long-term injury.
Absolutely.
And then you're dealing with an injury that just keeps getting hit again and again and again until that person really has no agency.
Yes.
So, this is the person you need to come to court and testify to the elements.
Yes.
And how does the state make a compelling case to this victim that they have to come to court and testify to the elements?
Well, it's really hard, and a lot of them do not want to. And we, as a general rule, and this is adult sexual assault, not children, but adult sexual assault, we try not to force them. Because the criminal justice process in and of itself can also be hugely traumatic. Telling your story to people when you don't want to or you're not ready can be hugely traumatic. So, we have always taken an approach in our office that we are trying to be trauma informed and we are victim centered. We're not going to put a victim in jail because they didn't show up for court. That does not happen in our office. We are going to try to find other ways to accomplish the goals of, representing the state of Texas.
Yeah.
Protecting the community without re-traumatizing and further traumatizing the victims in our cases.
And I think it's important. You shared, you're representing the state of Texas. You're not representing the victim.
That's right.
And, you have actually an additional oath on top of the oath that just general lawyers take. And what is that?
We have to seek justice.
Yeah, to see that justice is
right.
done. And does that mean forcing the victim to come and testify if she doesn't want to?
I think that's the calculation.
Yeah.
Right? It's the balancing of protecting our community and also protecting the interests of the victim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you have to get creative in situations like that? You have a victim who has a child with this trafficker, but he poses a very serious threat to the community. Are you able to be creative? Will he take this crime, a guilty plea on this crime, instead of the human trafficking? Do you have to make charging decisions like that?
We do. And there's lots of ways to get to the goals. And also, I think people hear the word plea bargain and there's like a negative connotation that comes with that. And I really think that's just a lack of understanding within our communities, just in civics.
Yeah.
But the majority of criminal cases across the country resolve via plea bargains. It's not every case is going to trial. It's just not possible. I mean, we don't have the people, the time, the courts, it's not possible. So the majority of cases resolved by plea bargain agreements. That's not an ugly term. That is the way the system is designed to operate. And then also, we've been trying to work really hard to figure out alternative ways to investigate these cases where we have evidence that we can present if we have to go to trial that doesn't rely all on the victim. So, we're looking for financial records, social media records, cell phone information, text messages, anything that we can present that shows the crime without having to put all of the pressure on the victim of the crime.
Right. Wow. That is so impressive. So these investigations, human trafficking, would you say they're more akin to a white collar crime in that they're financial tentacles and different witnesses and co-conspirators?
I mean, they could be. It just depends on the level of sophistication of the defendant, and what they're doing. A lot of our cases are just singular defendants who, they have a girlfriend and they've decided to start trafficking her, to bring money into the household or whatever. We have cases where, unfortunately, we have a lot of familial cases. So like grandmothers who are trafficking grandchildren that have been placed in their care by, say, CPS because the parents are unable to care for their children. Cases like that. I say it's very different than Taken. It's the things that people don't appreciate.
Now, you also oversee, I would assume, the Internet Crimes Against Children cases, the Child Sexual Abuse Material, CSAM. Have you had any AI deepfakes come to the office?
Not yet.
Oh.
Not yet. But we did. So we have assigned a prosecutor, a chief within that division. Her entire docket is only handling our online child sexual abuse material cases.
Wow.
So, and that was because we figured out, so I have 17 prosecutors in this division. Technology changes so fast and it is so complicated. I mean, we just can't keep up. It is easier to train the one on all the things than 17 people on all the things. And obviously she's cross-training because you have to have people to, sustainability. But her job is to become the expert in all the things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, is her job also to, well, let me just ask this.
Yeah.
How does the office support the prosecutor who has to lay eyes on the images?
I don't know if we're good at it or not. I mean, obviously we have resources out there. She chose this path. I mean, like she really, really, I mean, it's going to sound weird to people probably. She really likes it. Like she feels really strongly about prosecuting these cases and wants to do it. The technology part of things, she just really gets it and she enjoys learning technology and all of the things that come with that. We used to have this in our office many moons ago, and then it somehow got rearranged just organizationally. But there are people out there who, I mean, there are detectives. This is what they specialize in,
I believe these people are angels.
Yes.
I mean, the what they are doing for our society is, because once you see one of those images, you can't unsee it.
No, you can't.
Even as I sit here today,
I remember my very first one. Yeah.
It's a horror beyond human comprehension. And the fact that we have human-made tools that are creating this, I can't understand how we allowed this to happen.
There are evil people on this planet.
Evil people.
Yes.
And you see evil. Like, evil meets a reckoning at the Dallas County Frank Kelly Courthouse. I mean, there is so much evil there.
Yeah.
And it's not, the people that are fighting the evil, that's where evil has to be reckoned with. And I can't thank you enough for the work that you do there and everyone in your division. I mean, if I could just.
They're all heroes.
Heroes. Heroes. Now you work closely with lots of different task forces. How many different task forces do you deal with?
Oh my goodness. I don't even know.
Yeah, is it a dozen, maybe 2 dozen? Some of them federal, some of them state?
It's really not that many. We have managed, no one likes extra meetings. So we've been,
That's so true.
Yeah. So we have managed to, organize ourselves in such a way. So we have the sexual assault response team, which traditionally leans into adult victim-based sexual assault response. We've had that going for over a decade, since 2009. And it's made up of crisis center partners, law enforcement, DA's office, the forensics lab, mental health services, and our sexual assault nursing programs. So that's a main one. We just started a new one so that's called SART. We just started a new one called HART. So that's our human trafficking response team.
Okay.
And like brand new, we just started in January. The idea behind that is to model ourselves after SART, but we wanted to marry the adult side of human trafficking and the child side of human trafficking. So what had been happening up to this point is the two areas were very siloed, and the adult side of it, we didn't have a regular coming together of the minds. So this sort of gives us what we were missing there, but also, unfortunately, a lot of children, even when they've received services and intervention as teens, still do not get out of the trafficking life. And so they become adult victims too. And so those two sides need to talk, because the same victims that detectives may be coming into contact with, or prosecutors or service providers as children, are going to also come into contact with detectives who work adult cases and crisis providers, and you see what I mean? So they need to talk. And then we also have our smaller siloed, we have a human trafficking group that meets at the Dallas Children's Advocacy Center. And then we have a task force with our federal partners, the North Texas Human Trafficking Task Force, that is primarily run by Homeland Security, HSI, and then we have lots of different law enforcement partners that sit on that task force, and then they communicate regularly with the U.S. Attorney's Office and also our office.
And that task force is, it's not uncommon every month or two to see a massive
That's right.
operation.
Oh, they're award-winning. They're phenomenal in the work that they do.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of good convictions that have come out of the work of that group. We have an investigator who is grant funded that serves on that task force. He's testified over in federal court on some really big cases. We've seen some good sentences.
And these are the ones where you see like 230 perpetrators arrested for
That's them.
It's like everything. It's like there's the pictures and the trafficking and
Yes. Yes.
horrible.
Yeah, they assist in a lot of what we call the stings, or the operations to catch people who are buying. But then the thing that doesn't get reported as often is they're also doing what we call rescue operations. So it's where they pretend to be a buyer in order to have a victim come to them so that they can immediately meet them with a victim advocate and service provider to try and provide them an off-ramp.
Oh, wow. I didn't know about that.
Right. Yeah. But
Oh,
that
my
is some of the good
goodness.
work that they do too.
Now, a lot of your time must be spent securing funding for all of the initiatives that are needed
Yes.
in Dallas.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
because the county doesn't fund all this.
They do not. No, they don't. 10 years ago, 10 years ago is how it happened. I was at the Crimes Against Women conference, and there was the DA of Detroit at the time, Kim Worthy, who is in a part of a HBO documentary I recommend everyone watch called I Am Evidence.
Okay.
It's funded by Mariska Hargitay,
Yeah.
who's like a hero. But anyway, so it was all about, untested sexual assault kits sitting in property rooms. And I leaned over to the sergeant of the sex assault unit, Dallas Police Department at the time, who was sitting there with me. And I said, "Do we have kits?" And she said, "Oh, yeah." And I was like, "How many?" And she's like, "Well, we'll talk after this." So it was a lot. It was over 4,000. And so that became the journey towards learning grants. So that was what started our sex assault kit initiative unit at the DA's office. And we have been rewriting funding for that every 3 years. We've applied for supplemental funding to also handle sexual assault related homicides that either hadn't been tested or were cold cases and we hadn't solved. so that we could go back and like retest evidence under newer forensic methods. That is what has led to the beginnings of our just cold case homicide unit, where we're doing not sexual assault related homicides, just unsolved homicides. DPD also has their own side grant that provides investigators. They work on the FBI Violent Crime Task Force to work on those cases too. And then we just have to always seek funding for our victim advocates, our investigators. We just got awarded a new grant to provide another prosecutor and another victim advocate to the sex assault unit. So I spend a lot of time reading grant solicitations, writing applications.
Yeah.
I just had to learn a lot along the way. Now we have an incredible grant manager that she's been there a couple of years now, who's just phenomenal. But it's been a real learning curve, and I do spend a lot of time trying to find a way around, you know, lack of funding.
Yeah. I mean, as a society, to me, it's completely unacceptable that you have to spend so much of your time this way. I mean, look at the things we spend our money on. Like it's the human on human crimes that affect our society on the deepest levels.
Yes.
And that to me is where our resources need to be spent. But of course, I'm not the elected DA, nor the county judge. Anyhow.
Well, goals for 2027. Yeah, I was going to say goals for 2027 is to build our human trafficking unit. I mean, we have one prosecutor.
Brand new unit, right?
Brand new. We had it a long time ago. It kind of went away, but we brought it back because we recognized we needed consistency. And we also, it's so specialized and complex. And so, you know, much
even
like
more than CAC?
Yeah.
How so?
It really is, because the dynamics are just so different. I mean, one, you have the whole range of victims, right? So you're not just only working with child victims, you're working with adults too, who have their own dynamics going on. You know, the children and the adults, a lot of times, you know, they don't want to participate in what we're doing. You know, a lot of them have so much trauma that you're working through. And then, you know, like you were mentioning earlier with the finances and everything else, I mean, it just requires a lot of specialization and understanding of the rules of evidence and charging decisions and the strategy that goes into that and presenting a case and all the things. And then you really do need to have a special skill set to communicate with the victims on these cases. I mean, you just do.
You do.
You know, and so goals is to build that out so that we can have dedicated prosecutors. I mean, Sunny is our chief, Sunny Lewis. She's amazing. She was in the unit back when it existed before.
Wow.
And she has a real heart for that. I mean, a real heart for this work. If you ever have the opportunity to hear her speak, I'm telling you, like, it's like being in church. She's just amazing. And, you know, but she can't try every case.
No.
So she's just sitting second chair with all these prosecutors. She's doing all the grand jury intake and working with the police on the front end to try to sort of, you know, manage this big, big job.
Yeah. So when you apply for funding, what are the key data points that you kind of keep on the top of your head?
How many cases we get, how many cases we know are out there, the statistics, obviously.
Are you able to share any of those?
I don't have them off the top of my head, you know, but I mean, the truth is there's a lot of trafficking happening in Dallas DFW Metroplex because we sit at the crossroads of all the major freeways.
Yeah.
And so it comes here.
You can get anything in Dallas.
You can get
know,
anything.
I saw this in the opioid litigation. I was like, wow, we are the hub for every pharmaceutical distributor. Manufacturers have warehouses here. Isn't it true that the cartels have some sort of like a they don't shoot each other here because it's such an important distribution point? I don't know where I heard that.
I don't know.
That's
I would
urban myth in Dallas. There's less cartel violence because it's like so important to be able to do business here.
Yeah.
The Zetas, that's what it is.
Okay.
Anyway, little tangent. So you have to go, not only do you have to make a case to jurors to accurately assess the evidence and render a conviction if appropriate, but you have to make a case to public officials, government officials, to fund, to test, to do all the mechanics so that these cases can just make it to court.
Yes. Yes, that's 100% true.
If you could clone yourself, how many would you make?
A lot. So many. But I don't know that it's me that needs to be cloned, you know? I mean, we just need, well, we have them. We just need more of them. We need good, experienced prosecutors who really want to do this work. We need good, experienced investigators, detectives, advocates, you know, who just, you know, they really, this is their calling.
They're calling,
You know,
right? And
yeah.
I'm contacted fairly often by individuals who want to go to law school, and they say it's because they want to do the work you're doing. And it's really hard to have the conversation with them that it is really hard to get into this kind of work. And you can almost forget about it in the civil sector.
Yeah.
I mean, to successfully pursue a civil case, to make it worthwhile, is really uncommon and very hard to do. What role do you see businesses playing in human trafficking? Like hotels, taxis, Uber, Cash App, Facebook. I mean,
that's where it's happening. That's our evidence. Cash
Really?
App records. Yeah. You know, they're getting paid through Cash App, or, you know, the buyer is paying for the Uber to go pick her up and bring him to the hotel room that he's at. You know, so we order a subpoena all those records. You know, hotels, motels, you know, people like to think it's happening at the, you know, the ones that you would never think yourself you're going to stop at. Let me tell you, it's happening at every single one, all over the Metroplex, expensive ones, cheap ones, and everywhere in between, you know.
wow. And so as the, you know, just to take a couple of high profile cases, have you followed the Epstein and Diddy fact patterns at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, look at Epstein, you know, the private jets. I mean, to me, that was such a clear oversight on everyone's part, is the private airports and the hotels. I mean, are you finding that people who work in these places are doing see something, say something?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I think people are afraid to get involved. And I think that's just general in life, you
Yeah.
know, just across the board. People are so afraid to get involved. You know, I guess if that were going to be my message to people, it's just ask yourself, even if it's not a call to the police, how can I help?
Yeah.
So, you know, when you stop at the red light down here and you see a woman who's sitting on the side of the road under that bridge, you know, maybe ask yourself generally, you know, I wonder how she ended up there. You know, what happened to her in her life that now that's where she lives? And how can I help? In maybe not her specifically, but in general, you know.
Yeah. And if you come into contact with someone, how do you advise people when they get that gut feeling like something's not right here, something's not right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can call the police, you make a report, but there's not a lot that they can do necessarily. I mean, it just depends. It's so fact specific. You know, a lot of our cases, they come to us, you know, like I said, you know, they're doing the rescue ops, they're doing the stings. You know, people will report, like children, you know, teachers are a big reporter of, you
Yeah.
know, abuse, you know, because they're with the kids all day long, every day. You know, you can drive down any number of streets here in Dallas and see lots of people standing on the street corners, you know, and community members will call the police department and they'll say, hey, we want you guys out here. We want you making contact. But the truth of the matter is, you know, you want to talk about coercion and being held hostage, like you said earlier, in this life. A lot of them, it might take 7 or 8 times, most of them, before they'll actually be ready to move out of the life, you know, and to really take hold of, or even feel like they can, you know, take advantage of the services and the intervention that's being offered to them. You know, it's so hard to break out of that mindset, you know.
If you could give one message to victims of human trafficking or any crime against their person today, what would it be?
It would be, I know that it is hard. You know, I mean, there are so many barriers, but there are so many people out there who are working to tear those down, truly, and they're not judging you. They're not, you know, they just want to help. They want to help you. I mean, legitimately help you get out of dangerous situations, and see, be successful and have a happy life,
Yeah.
you know.
And if you could give a message to just the general public who might someday be on one of your juries, what would it be?
Stop blaming people. I mean, that's really what it is. When you see that Netflix documentary or whatever, maybe do a little research, afterwards, just a quick Google search about what it really means. And then ask yourself, how is this happening in my community? Because it is.
Yeah.
And what can I do to help?
Really just having the courage to not look away.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so much of the work that you need us as members of the public to do is having courage to care about our fellow human being who walks among us.
Yes. And often it's the one that, maybe is in the worst circumstances. I think people feel overwhelmed a lot of times, like they don't know what they can do, or they think that what they can do isn't going to make a difference because it's so small. But it's really not about, how much money you donate or running a nonprofit or how much time you can dedicate working at some place or whatever, volunteering. But it really is micro assists. All those micro assists lead to the macro,
And in your experience, you must have had some really beautiful moments where you know for a fact that you were helping another person.
Mm-hmm.
Are those moments worth the continued fight?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
They really are.
Mm-hmm.
I can't thank you enough for being here today, Amy.
Yeah.
I'm feeling emotional as
Thank you for
we've had
having
this
me.
conversation. What you've learned today about the work that Amy does at the Dallas County District Attorney's Office, I implore you to take this with you and really meditate on how you can be a part of the solution. This woman, she's working her hardest. All of her lawyers are working her hardest, and they really need our help to keep up their amazing and impressive work. And if you sit on the board of a foundation or support any charitable giving, I would love to put you in contact with Amy, and let's make Dallas a stronger place. Thank you so much for joining us today on Outcry Witness Unspoken, Amy. It has been a joy.
Thank you so much.